Jurecic. I'm an associate professor in the English department, and I just finished a book called Illness as Narrative. The book is about this phenomenon that anyone who's walked into a Barnes & Nobles and looked in the health section may have noticed, which is that there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books that come out pretty much every year that are personal narratives about illness or disability or dysfunction of some kind, physical dysfunction of some kind, and they're incredibly popular. What's surprising for someone who studies literature in the 20th century is that these books didn't always exist. It wasn't the case in the mid-20th century that a lot of people were writing memoirs of illness. So one of the questions that struck me is that where did they come from? Why are we so interested in reading them now? Why are so many people interested in writing them now? And then once I got started, I realized that there wasn't a single easy answer to that question, that there were many answers to that question, and this concatenation of events, cultural events and social events that came together to sort of create the conditions for this coming into being. The main sort of juxtaposition that I had was between the 1918 flu, where all over the world more than 50 million people died of the 1918 flu, yet that is virtually absent in English and American literature. And then you move forward 65, 70 years to the HIV/AIDS crisis in the US, and literally tens of thousands of texts emerge from people's experiences at that moment in time. So what happened in that space during the 20th century that all of a sudden made it possible for this new kind of literature to sort of to take hold and grab hold of people's imaginations? So one of the many things that happened was a real change in medical institutions and the medical profession itself. We went from an era of family practice and doctors who would visit people's homes and visit them there and see them there, and who knew generations of a family because the doctor was in town and knew the grandparents and the parents and the children and the children of the children, to moments where we go into our doctor and if we're lucky we have 11 minutes to talk to the doctor in our HMO or whatever. People's stories, their life stories, as well as their body stories, there's no time for them anymore, so they got sort of shunted off to the side. And it just seems as if those stories have to be told. One way or another, they have to come out. And one of the ways in which they came out in an era when storytelling, or even writing stories and printing stories, was relatively cheap, is that they started to appear in publications, in magazines and in books, and now online, everywhere online. And the main reason to write the book was to get people to pay attention to this form and to think about its cultural importance. And if that's what happens, I think that has the potential to enrich both literary studies, which hadn't been paying much attention to narratives of illness, and also to medical humanities and medical education, where attunement to the ways in which people tell their stories and the language that they use to tell them, I think, is also really important. Thinking about who would read the book, people who are interested, anyone who's interested in literature, and especially interested in literature that's being written now, in the late 20th century, early 21st century. I'm excited that the book sort of exists at this intersection between literary studies and maybe the medical humanities. So a lot of the feedback that I've gotten and a lot of the reviews that I've gotten so far have been in medical humanities journals. So I know that there are physicians and medical educators who are also reading this book. And it's nice to be able to get feedback from a range of people. When I wrote this book, I was reading far outside of my discipline, so it's nice to sort of get a sense that the book too might be reaching beyond the discipline.